Every piece of test equipment, every tool, every work surface in this lab has a purpose. And that's to take a piece of vintage audio electronics from the diagnostic phase all the way through to final verification and long-term testing as efficiently as possible. Welcome to the Novolux Stereophonic Lab. Let me show you how it works. When a new project arrives at the shop, the first place it ends up is the main bench for a baseline test. Before I power up a mystery device for the first time, I'm always going to have it connected behind my isolation transformer and variac, the Sencor PR570. This also has a user adjustable trip set, which comes in handy from time to time. The output of the PR570 feeds into this box. This gives me a switch, so if my device under test doesn't have a power switch or the power switch is broken, it gives me a nice easy way to toggle it on and off. My gray outlet is connected directly to the output of the PR570. This orange outlet is behind my dim bulb current limiter. My bulb is located to the left of the test panel. I use 150 watt for almost everything and rarely change it, but if I need to, I can just pull this off and swap the bulb. This is the patch panel, and it may look really complicated on first glance, but what's happening here is pretty simple. I'm just taking the connections from the pieces of test equipment at the bench and bringing them down to one single location to make patching nice and easy. Without the patch panel, I'd constantly have connections going back and forth across the test equipment, blocking my ability to reach the devices and view the displays. The Siglent SDG1032X is my daily driver signal generator. I use this to create sine waves for testing amplifier output power, square waves for testing frequency response. It's basically my reference signal that gets fed into the device under test. To the left of the bench, I use these Pomona fingers to organize all of my test leads. These are my speaker leads here. They're terminated banana on one side to interface with the patch panel, and then on the other side I have a variety of connectors, bare wire, spade, banana to interface with a variety of different amplifiers. We've got some RCA cables, various clip leads, scope probes, and some specialty cables for interfacing with the distortion analyzer. The output of the Siglent signal generator lands here at the patch panel, so I can just plug in an RCA cable and connect directly to the device under test. With a reference signal fed into the device under test, the next step is looking at how that signal is manipulated by the device itself to see if it's working properly. And for that, we need oscilloscopes. And I get teased a lot in the comments. People say, "Ben, why do you have so many oscilloscopes at your bench?" And I think they're getting confused by some of the screens on the analyzers. I really only have 3 oscilloscopes. Give me a break. The first scope is a very simple 2-channel OWON scope. This was my very first digital oscilloscope, and I never got rid of it because it just works and the screen is huge. This scope is dedicated to a device called the Sencor PA81. The Sencor PA81 is really the heart of my bench. I use this piece all the time, and I'm really sorry to anyone who's looking for one of these because the market has gone absolutely crazy on this device, and for good reason. It was kind of a sleeper in the audio repair industry for a really long time. I primarily use the PA81 for looking at line level signals coming out of the pre-out jacks or tape-out jacks on a receiver, and it allows me to see the signals on an oscilloscope, look at the relative levels of one channel versus another with the needles, and I can also listen to the signal as well. With the 2-channel scope dedicated to the PA81, I need a second digital oscilloscope for general use. The Siglent SDS1104XE functions as my daily driver. I use it to monitor the signals across my dummy loads, do signal tracing, and look at balance signals like we're seeing here. The third scope is a Sencor SC3100. This is an analog scope. There's certain things that analog scopes just do better than digital scopes, looking at XY mode, Lissajous patterns. I use this a lot for tuner alignment. Speaking of tuner alignment, my RF signal generator is a Sencor SG80. This allows me to verify dial tracking and proper stereo function during the initial bench testing. Once I've completed the baseline testing on a device, I move over to my computer desk where I enter all of my notes in a database that I've created using a software called Airtable. The computer is a Mac Mini that I have mounted underneath the desk. I also use this workstation for looking at schematics and doing all the editing on my YouTube videos. To the right of the display, I have this beautiful KLH Model 8 tabletop radio that I restored. This is a mono FM radio, all vacuum tube. I don't use it all that much, but it's nice to listen to local radio every once in a while, just get an idea of the events that are happening in the community and stuff like that. So I do use it from time to time, but mostly it's just there because it looks pretty. And speaking of pretty, my beautiful wife, who's put up with my vintage audio obsession since the beginning. This is a Fujitsu ScanSnap. I take a lot of handwritten notes during my restorations, documenting how a control is connected, or in this case, designing a foot for a Sansui project I'm working on. So it's nice to be able to scan in the source document at full resolution and upload it to my database. After I've entered all of the notes and gotten approval to move forward with the proposed work, the next step is putting together a parts kit, and for that, we gotta head over here. This is how I store my parts. This is a standard 48 by 18 inch wire rack or baker's rack. And then I use these Sterilite containers that are perfect for Mauser bags. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across, just a really nice fit. So over the years, this is what I found works the best for me. So up top, I have a bunch of consumables, microfiber cloths, Hacko tips, capacitors, resistors, semiconductors, miscellaneous parts like hookup wire and hardware, and then on the bottom I have proprietary stuff, things specific to Pioneer, Macintosh, Sansui, so each one of those brands gets a bin or two. I have some additional bins over here on my spare bench, half-watt metal film, fuses, terminal tie strips, lots of hardware. But I'm getting off track. I'm supposed to be talking about making a parts kit. So I use that same software Airtable to create an individual database for each model that I frequently work on. And I'm able to sort and filter that in a really strategic way. So when I build out one of these parts kits, I can sort by just a single capacitor type and go through the entire project and pick each one of those parts and load it into a bin. So for a stacked film, for example, I just bring this bin over and I look at the database and say I need 4.22 microfarad films. So I'd come into here and I just have these arranged in order. So I just finger through until I find 0.22, grab this bag, pull out the parts that I need, and put them in a little bin for that board. I repeat that process for resistors, trimmers, and just go through and build out the entire kit for the project. And this brings me to my favorite part of the entire lab, the tray truck. The reason that all of the equipment at this bench is so tightly packed is I used to live in Manhattan with very limited space. It was this bench and the parts rack right behind me. So I was working in this little aisle with a laptop on a garbage can beside me. It was really, really tight. So what ended up happening, I didn't have enough physical real estate to lay out chassis components, parts kits. I could really only work on 1, maybe 2 units at a time if I was lucky, and that absolutely killed the efficiency. So that's where the tray truck comes in. I sourced this product from Global Industrial, and it's been an absolute game changer in the new lab because it basically multiplies the amount of flat space that I have available. Let's imagine for a moment I'm working on this Marantz 4400 project. Got the faceplate, some chassis parts in here. I've got a couple of boards removed that I'm working on, project parts right here. But let's say halfway through this, I end up with a failed transistor that's not in my parts list. It's not something that normally fails. I don't have it in stock. I need to special order it. This project is now on hold until those parts come in. Normally, this would be sitting out on one of my benches, taking up a bunch of space. But now, I can stash it away and jump into the next project. This is an SX1250 card set that's ready for rebuild. I've got all of my parts prepped here. I just need to grab these boards and start rebuilding them. I placed the tray truck opposite the bench so it'd be nice and easy to grab the parts. So I can just slide over here, grab the board and the parts, and come back over, and I'm off to the races. And speaking of which, this chair also makes it really easy. This is a Viper Robust Steel Max. I absolutely love this chair. I figured if I was going to be sitting on something for hours and hours every day, I might as well invest in something nice. If you're interested in seeing this workflow unfold in real time, you might like the Novolux Stereophonic Patreon page. Head down to the description to learn more. Now that we're doing some rework, let's talk about the soldering setup. I use a Hacko FM206. This is a 3-head solder desolder station. I believe this is now discontinued, but the tools are still in production and can be interfaced with smaller stations. They just stopped making this one. This is the desoldering tool that I use, the FM2024. It's really light in comparison to an FR301, and it has this removable handle so you can use it in a pencil mode, which is pretty cool. I don't use it all that much like that, but it's there. This is the FM2027. Now, if the tip goes on this, you have to replace the tip and the heater all as one assembly, so it's a little bit more expensive to maintain, but it's so light and so precise. I really love this iron. The FR301 I keep around as a spare, and I use it for point-to-point work and specialty stuff. So right now I have this wide tip loaded in, which is excellent for extracting relays. When I'm using the FR301, I use this little relay timer because the device itself doesn't have a built-in auto shutoff. So this helps me remember not to leave it on. So I can set it for 1 hour, 30 minutes, and there's a dedicated outlet under the bench that's plugged into. So that's how I run that, just for a little bit of extra safety. The last tool over here is the FM 2029. This is a hot air tool. I use this for melting heat shrink, removing corrosive glue, stuff like that. I also use a Hakko fume extractor as a full-time technician. This was definitely worth the investment. The extractor itself lives behind the bench, and I can just move this head around depending on the project that I'm working on. And then I use this little remote switch that my friend Phil at Phil's Analog Basement turned me on to for toggling it on and off remotely. Here are a couple more pieces of test equipment that I use during the service and restoration process. This is a Siglent SPD 3303XE 2-channel power supply. I use this for powering up boards out of circuit and dialing in dropping resistor values on LEDs. This is a Sencor LC103 capacitor and inductor analyzer. I use this for leakage testing on capacitors. It can test capacitors at actual voltages up to 1,000 volts. Really, really handy device. And of course, the obligatory fluke collection. Once I've completed a restoration, I like to verify the performance. One of the main pieces of equipment I use for that is the Panasonic VP7725. This is a 2-channel distortion analyzer with an ultra-low distortion oscillator. It's something like 0.0008%, and it allows me to display the output power based on the resistance of my dummy load. So it's a really quick way to measure max output power, check distortion. I use it all the time for checking power amplifiers and during tuner alignment. I also have a Roda & Schwarz UPL66. This is a really nice MS-DOS-based analyzer. I really like it, but it's a headless version. There's no screen on it, so I need to have a monitor connected up at the bench. I have this 4.3 Dell display attached to a swing arm on the back of the bench so I can tuck it back nice and tight, and I use a keyboard that's on a slide-out tray at the front of the bench to control it. I use the UPL primarily for frequency response analysis or anytime I need to run a sweep. After I've fully verified the device that I'm working on, I like to actually listen to it. So for that, I have a signal source, Sonos Connect, that's fed into a Rotel DAC, and I also have this Macintosh MC2125 power amplifier. Now, the reason that I've got a Mac at the bench is this fit all of my needs. I wanted input attenuation, metering, speaker on-off switch, and something with a really robust output section that was hard to blow up. I can listen to the device under test with these Totem Mic speakers up top by my chemicals. There's also a second setup here, and that's for the long-term test rig, which is what we'll look at next. The final step in the workflow is long-term real-world testing. This is my long-term test rig. It consists of a power amplifier, preamplifier, turntable, and patch panel. It also has a dedicated device under test outlet bank that can be ran behind a Variac. This is one of my favorite pieces of test equipment. It's a Genrad 1571 Variac. So you can move the front panel control here and it's going to act just like a conventional Variac. But what's cool about this is you can set a reference and have this thing adjust the voltage for you automatically with a motor. This comes in handy when I'm testing 1960s vacuum tube electronics. A lot of those have 117 volt power transformers, and it's nice to back the voltage down a little bit so that they're not stressed out as much. The preamp is a Rotel RC1570. This device has exactly what I need for this application: RCA and XLR inputs and outputs and a built-in DAC. The power amplifier is an Accuphase P300. I completed a full restoration on this piece on the channel, and just like the other bench amp, I've got input attenuation, metering, and on-off speaker switching. I have another Sonos Connect up here, which gives me an analog and digital signal source. In the past, if I was going to test a phono stage, I would just use my inverse RIAA filter that's built into the panel. But once I had a little bit more space in this rack, I decided to install my Technics SL1210 Mark II. This gives me the ability to quickly switch between MM and MC cartridges and test phono stages on preamps and receivers under real-world conditions. At the patch panel itself, I have access to all of the I/O that I need from the back of the preamp, power amplifier, Sonos Connect, and turntable. I also gave myself a relay to link the amplifier output directly into the test speakers. That's because it's a really common patch when I'm testing preamps and source components, so that just allows me to do that without having to run a physical jumper. I've got a 12 volt trigger output here for testing amps that have that capability, and then everything else is basically just the connectors for all of the components. One more important thing down here, these are fuses for the speakers, and I can't tell you how many times these have saved me from blowing up a tweeter. If you're thinking about building a panel like this, having fuses in line with your test speakers is essential. I just completed the electronic restoration on this Sansui G22000. It's interfaced with the long-term test rig. I'm going to be running this for 3 days straight, 10 hours at a time, And through that process, I'll be testing out all of the switches, making sure that all of the functions work, testing every input and every output to make sure that this thing is completely ready before it goes back. When this G22000 came in, it was completely wrecked. It's one of the most challenging restorations that I've ever taken on. So if you'd like to see the lab in action and maybe watch me struggle a little bit, head to the next video. I'll see you there.